Yo, and welcome back to the Banter Boys podcast. My name is Sanji, with me is Neil. How you doing, boy?
I'm not too shabby, my mate. Oh, good. Excited about the new season. See how we get up to.
Definitely. But are you sure you're excited? Because you just lost your starting striker for the next 8 weeks.
I know, and unfortunately, he was my starting striker after the draft as well, so it's proved to be a little bit of a headache, but such is the game. You know, one hand takes away, and then because I was in 12th in the draft overall out of 12 people, I've been able to have the first waiver, so I think I've been able to sort it out a little bit.
Okay, well, I mean, it might have worked out in your favor then. All right. I think now is the perfect time to introduce our guests, so let's start things off with our fan introduction. Tell us your name, your Twitter handle, which club you'll be representing today, where you're from, and, a little bit about yourself. What do you do?
Sure, of course. So I'm Neil Cartwright. Twitter handle is Neil R. Cartwright, all one word. Club allegiance, aligned with the Glorious Wolves. Very excited about their season coming up. Based over in London, and I'm working over for Nickelodeon at the moment. So
Really? That's exciting. I actually live in London as well.
Oh, no way. Whereabouts are you?
So I'm actually based in Finsbury Park at the moment.
Oh, cool. I know it very well. I'm on the other end of the Piccadilly line. I'm over in Ealing.
Okay, well, I guess we'll just have to grab a beer right after this recording then.
Absolutely. Tell me where the Spoons is in the middle of town. We'll catch you halfway.
Love it. Okay, so fans, listeners, welcome again to another fan segment. If this is new to you, I'm going to give you the bit of a breakdown as to how we're going to run things, right? We'll have a bit of a general discussion where we'll talk about the impact of new manager, ownership, club's previous performance, new season expectations, old assets versus new assets, expected formation, which kind of leads to starting 11 chat, the impact of the 5 subs, the World Cup, and then obviously we'll talk about the draft side of the game, Neil's first pick from Wolves, his next 3 picks, at least one hidden gem, and then we'll look at how he kind of handles trading, right? Does he look at form? Does he look at fixtures, like 2v1 trades? What's his secret sauce sort of thing? Before we get started, I've got to do the social plug because Ross isn't here. So if you want to share our content, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at BanterB. We're on Discord on the Draft PL channel. Our Discord number is 6585. We're also on Reddit, u/banter_boys. And you can find all our pods on anchor.fm, which it distributes to Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, all that beautiful stuff, right? Sometimes on YouTube, but again, it's depending on how lazy I am. And we just started, I need to plug this again. We recently started a Buy Me a Coffee page. I think it's the coffee with the KOFI, which we've had some contributors to already, so thank you so much for that. I'll save that shout out though for another pod when we start the regular season. But anyway, Neil, my first question before we get started: why Wolves?
Family team. So all my family's from Wolverhampton. Dad's one of 4 brothers, all of them very big Wolves fans. I'll be honest, when I first got into football, my mum was a big United fan. She loves Nobby Styles and everything, so she had me on the hook there until I was about 11 years old. I'm 37 now. And when they sold Lee Sharp and got rid of the grey kit, the old man started taking me to games over at Molineux.
Wow. I mean, how's it been being a Wolves fan so far, though? Because it's only recently that you guys have been back in the Prem, right?
Absolutely. I think we're coming up to... So I could count. So this will be the 5th season up now. It's been... it's very much a roller coaster, to be honest. When I first moved down to London, Wolves were very much on the they were on the precipice of a disastrous double relegation season that happened. They went down to League One, but then it was kind of the best thing that could have happened to the club, to be honest, at the time. It meant that they could get rid of a lot of the players that were maybe a little bit older, maybe weren't quite doing it, and then they brought through a lot of the younger players as well, players like Danny Barr. We got a brilliant boss in Kenny Jackett who got them back up first time. And then after a season in the Championship, then, we all thought we'd won the, we'd activated God mode basically on Football Manager when Fosun came in. And it was you couldn't help but get excited about it. So I think it's been, there's a lot that can be said, particularly off the back of some of the fan interaction with Ask Wolves and the podcast that they did. And you find out that maybe they might be looking towards the club to be more of a lifestyle brand, and it makes you question whether or not they're truly in it. But it's we've had a couple of buys which over the summer, which seems to show that they are still in. It's just it's a heavy time at the moment with a lot of clubs struggling. We're certainly very fortunate to be in the position that we're in at the moment.
Yeah. And is there any sort of new ownership or maybe backroom staff changes that, the average fan isn't aware of that we should know of? Because, I obviously do want to chat about going from the Nuno era to the Bruno Lage era.
For sure.
Yeah, anything about ownership we should know about?
I think there's a lot of fans disgruntled at the moment with how it's working with maybe recruitment, and if there's such a George Mendes link there anymore, and if not, if it's going back to the internal recruitment team, and why some deals aren't getting over the line. Wolves have been looking at Mateus Nunes and a few other players from around that area recently, and the deals haven't been coming to fruition. However, we've been fortunate enough to get Nathan Collins in, who looks like a really good buy. So
yeah. Exciting centre back from Burnley, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw his goal for Ireland against Ukraine, and it was one that Max Kilman himself mimicked recently. So and a lot of these players are also coming back. Pedro Neto was out until March last year off the back of that bad knee injury. We just got Raul Jimenez back, and he was having a brilliant pre-season before he got injured again. But hopefully we'll be back by the end of September. So. These players, these are all young players when we got them, barring Raul, really. So there's a couple of others that seem to be emerging at the moment, which we'll get into in a little bit. So I do think there's reasons to be hopeful. It's just, last year I'd have snapped your hands off for a top 10 finish, and even though there was bad form at the end of the season, it was a good year, good first season for the boss overall, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about moving from the Nuno era to the Lage era now, right?
Yep.
When you guys, I believe, came back in 2018-2019 season, right? I think that was Nuno's first season in the Prem.
That's
if
right.
I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. You finished an exciting 7th place in the table, right? With the exciting, I want to say, 3-5-2 formation, right? With Doherty and Johnny, and yeah, it almost like he kind of, I don't know if he really revolutionized, bringing that system back, but I think I would like to say it definitely sparked something, because you see all the top clubs now starting to adopt that system, right? But now Lage has kind of slowly been trying to, it feels like, change that to a back four now. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about that transition maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a formation that we played in the Championship in that title-winning season. They brought Cody back and played him as a part of a 3-man back line. And ultimately it meant that whenever the team was in possession, it meant that we would have 2 wing-backs elevated as well. So it meant that we could put teams under pressure. And as long as we retained the ball and played well through the middle, then, there was always options. It meant that we had security at the back. And also with players like Jota being fed through from Neves, there was a lot of opportunities to score some goals. And, certainly that happened. And they were able to get up to the Premiership with that. And then off the back of that, going into the Premiership seasons, it worked like a treat that first year. And then going into the second season, when we had that European run as well, with a very small squad, without a lot of injuries, Wolves are certainly able to take advantage of that as well. And I think that came to the fore when we had the COVID season, when there wasn't much good form, there was a lot of injuries, all that sort of stuff. So the season after, we'd had that European adventure, and, they ended up finishing 13th. That was kind of a consequence of not having too many options further up the field, and then it became apparent that the club would have to move away from that five without the ball and that 3 at the back with the ball sort of formation. That was it, and then it was something that Nuno tried to implement, but because you've got Raul Jimenez coming back in, he wasn't, strictly speaking, in good form, but given the length of his injury and the severity of it, then ultimately, it's something that may have helped nudge Nuno towards the edge, and also put Bruno in, because he would always play a 4, really. So that's kind of where we're at now. It's something that Bruno Lage tried to implement last year, but then you can't reinvent the wheel sometimes. So then it ended up being a case of rolling back to the 5, and then I think now this pre-season's been all about driving Wolves to playing a 4 at the back.
Yeah, and I mean, like, how do you feel about like last season's? We're kind of gonna mix, I guess, into the next question, right? How do you feel about last season's performance, like finishing 10th, right? Because after Nuno kind of left, it was a bit of a sad moment, right? Because I think fans were like a little disappointed, but again, like you were kind of coming out of that COVID era, right? So it's very
Yeah.
difficult to kind of judge on that point, right? So you finished 13th, which I think was still respectable, but yeah, finishing 10th now, where I think Lodge didn't get a proper chance to implement the football that he wants to
Well, that's
implement.
it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So he was a fresh manager into the job, and I think without there was purchases and loans made that sort of looks like it was going to come off a little bit. Like Huang played very well for his first few games, and then he ended up with a thigh injury, I believe, and then he sort of rolled back, and then just when it's not in your favour, you sort of go back to the tried and tested, don't you? And I think that's kind of what happened with Bruno. So now that we've had this pre-season where he's had them together pretty much all like for the last 4 weeks now, and they've been all around Spain and Portugal. They look, they've been playing a 4 all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess talking about like playing the 4, has he had to change anything since Jimmy's recent injury?
Not really. I think it's just a case of there might be some rotation. You might see Huang start. You might see Podence or Neto move into a false 9 sort of role. You've also got Adama Traore who's due to come back from injury. So, as always, by all accounts, the club are looking to make some purchases, albeit late on, so they might not settle straight away. So, it's one of those big question mark moments. But the core of the squad, the spine of the squad's decent. They managed to replace Cez leaving, who was a great point scorer last year, with Nathan Collins. So yeah, I think maybe a similar sort of season, maybe 10th, could be accurate really.
Yeah, so I mean, let's talk about new season expectations really quickly then. What are you really expecting from this team? Like, are you expecting a European finish now? Because Lage does come with some sort of high expectations coming from Benfica, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with respect to, I mean, it's one of those where this is the first season back proper where everyone's going to be back in the grounds and all that sort of stuff, and it's we haven't quite got the spectre of COVID like we had before, so it's going to feel more like a real season. I'm hoping the fans have patience as a consequence, and it hopefully doesn't roll back into a 5. But looking at the fixtures that Wolves have got at the moment. Last year, the season very much depended around the way that the fixtures broke. The first 3 games were quite difficult. I mean, if I recall correctly, it was United. Oh, blimey, who was it? United, Leicester, and I forget the last one now, off the top of my head. But then off the back of that, it was a nice, relatively comfortable run that took us through to Christmas. And I was saying at the time that would be where we make the bulk of our points, and then. The hope gets you a little bit. And when we had those 2 games against Arsenal, back to back, off the back of them being delayed and then called back into the season and everything, that was the point where you're thinking, right, if we can get at least 1 win out of these 2, then we'll see how we go. And it unfortunately sort of marked the start of a decline for the rest of the season. But I do think this year, just looking at August at the moment, Leeds, Fulham, Spurs, Newcastle, Bournemouth, that takes us into September. There's some points there, definitely.
Okay, so now let's kind of talk about the assets really quickly, right? I want to kind of go as far back as maybe January 2022. You guys got in an exciting talent in Chiquinho, who I believe is injured at the moment?
Yeah, so he had, I think it was an ACL or an MCL, one of the two, but it's basically ruled him out for the entire season. So unfortunately, I don't think there's much value to him this year, but Pedro Neto's come back in and he'll be looking to make up for lost time, so he's certainly one to keep an eye out for if you haven't done your drafts yet.
Definitely. And what about having lost Adama Traore on loan to Barcelona? That must have been a bit of a shock to the system. I mean, not just for how much quality he is, but as a Fantrax asset as well. I wouldn't say is like a top maybe 3 or 4 round pick at least.
Kind of, but then also he's very hot and cold as well, and he was coming off the bench for the last half an hour a lot of times. So he's if he was starting every game, he'd be just on dribbles alone, like ghost points in that respect. It'd be, he's worth the price, of maybe a top 4 draft or something like that. But when he's not consistently getting picked, when he's got to come on and like sort of break ranks and everything, I don't know if there's too much value to him. However, with that said, I mean, and he's injured now, so it's hard to say because with Neto coming back at that point last season, you're kind of thinking it'd be 1 in, 1 out, but then obviously he's got to get himself back up to form, and then with that coinciding with bad form across the squad as well, unfortunately, just it's one of those where the wheels came off a little bit, but they had such a strong start to the season, that it does give you hope for this season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you already talked about as well Nathan Collins coming in this season. There were a few surprising outs for me, though, right? And maybe we can kind of quickly touch on those outs and how much of an impact you think it is, losing these guys. But the likes of Marcel being released, the likes of Romain Saiss even, Kiana, whoever or however.
Yeah.
I think people always butcher that name.
I think it's Herver.
Yeah, Hover. And Fabio Silva as well, going on loan. The Fabio Silva one, I think, hurts a lot given the recent injury to Jimmy, no?
It does, but that's always in hindsight. I get the impression that the club have got people lined up and it's just taking a little while to get them over the line, which could be detrimental to the season. But if I'm honest, I don't think he contributed too much in terms of points anyway, and then from a fan's perspective, you always want your younger players to do well, and he was improving everything, but ultimately you need people that can do it at the time, and having signed him at the age of 18, there's still an apprenticeship to be served there. So going out to Anderlecht, which will be a competitive league in Germany, but also looking to get goals and him trying to apply himself a little bit there. That's kind of that's where he needs to be honest. I think he's better served over there than maybe coming off the bench or over here. I don't think he's, strictly speaking, ready yet to lead the line. Much as it pains me to say, because I'd like to see him do well.
Yeah, for sure. So what about the other guys that I mentioned? You think we're going to miss them at all?
Not really. I think Cez was great for corners, headers, that sort of thing. And he was a brilliant figure around the club as well, very popular. He signed with the club initially around the same time as Cody. And, they played centre mid together. So there's there's a strong relationship there and everything. But if they're looking to improve then, and, if he wasn't... if the deal wasn't appealing to him and he's got opportunities to maybe go to Turkey or somewhere like that, and, bearing in mind he's Moroccan as well, so he might be more comfortable relatively closer to home, that sort of thing, you can't really begrudge him that because he gave us 5 years. Yeah. And with that in mind, we've got Nathan Collins in, shows that there is a little bit of money to spend. It'd be great to see what he's all about because he's come across very highly rated, and I'm very excited to see what he's got about him.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, on the point of Nathan Collins, you think he can put up similar numbers to Saiss? Because Saiss was a decent Fantrax asset as well.
He was great. I had Saiss last year. He was one of my big faves. It remains to be seen. I mean, looking at Nathan Collins' numbers now, and he had 158, and he only came in with about 10, 12 games left in the season for Burnley. I know that he had a bit of an issue on the last game of the season. Did he give away a penalty or something like that, or maybe get a red card?
I think it was a red card, I believe.
Yeah, something along those lines. But, again, it comes to experience, and then, just seeing little, not to be like a YouTube warrior or something like that, but seeing him pick up the ball and sort of run through Ukraine full team from his own half and then score a decent goal, it shows that there is good technique there. So if he's comfortable bringing the ball forward, splitting the lines, maybe playing, advanced passes there, that sort of thing, it could be... depending on how you got your league set up, he could be on for, assists and that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, now I think let's quickly move on to expected formation starting 11. How do you think things are going to shape up?
I believe it's going to go, I think it'll be 4-3-3 is what he's aiming for, where he'll end up with either... if you haven't got the ball, perhaps you could switch. You could end up with a double pivot. But then the three options that we've got in the middle, you could have... you're looking at Moutinho, you're looking at Neves, but also you've got Dendoncker as an option as well. And, all three are very highly rated by the boss. So, there could certainly be something there. And then also with the three across the top, and then also, you could be looking at playing, if you're using that double pivot, then you could, and dropping one of those guys, you could be looking at having Podence playing as a 10 behind the striker. Then either side of him, you could have, starting the season, it'll be Morgan Gibbs-White. You'll also be looking at Podence. Oh, sorry, so it's gone. Maybe Juan could also come in. You've also got Pedro Neto, who could be Pedro Neto will be good value. You know, he takes on players. He's very similar to a Dwight McNeil, but he might get a few more goals about him. And then also looking at the fullbacks as well, you're looking at Ryan Aït-Nouri, who could be a real treat in this game this season. He's a very good preseason.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so now impacts of 5 subs World Cup. I think one of the biggest thing with the 5 subs I'm worried about is the rotation options you have for that wing back spot, right? Or that full back spot, let's say.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of World Cup, who do you have going out? So let's, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, a lot of that will come down to form. I think you could have put your house on Cody until we've gone to the 2 at the back, and then I don't think he'll be starting.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see, if there's an injury across those 3, then I think Cody's the first one to come back in. But I get the impression that the boss is going to be looking to have Kilman and Collins starting. Maybe Cody in rotation with Collins a little bit just to settle things down, but I don't think he's as nailed on for the World Cup as he would have been before. Maybe Kilman as an outsider. Looking at the Portuguese side of things, I think if Neto has a good season, he's certainly in consideration. Neves will be on the plane. Aït-Nouri, maybe not. I believe he's playing for France, but ultimately it comes down to form. And if they're looking for form players, and if Wolves have a good start, there's a few lads that are in with a sniff.
Fair enough. Okay. So now I think let's move on to the fan favorite segment, which is the draft segment of the game.
Sure.
Okay. Who do you have for the first pick from Wolves? Because I would think this was an obvious one pre-Jimmy injury, right? But now things have changed for sure, right?
Absolutely. Let me just... I've got to bring that back up 1 second there. So my first Wolves pick was, Jimmy. I had him in the 5th round.
Mm.
And then 7th round, I had Ryan Aït-Nouri. But I couldn't believe he dropped that low, to be honest with you. And then, unfortunately, a good pal of mine pinched Morgan Gibbs-White on the next pick. So I had to make a big choice between Gibbs-White and Jesse Lingard. And I was just thinking that Lingard's, with everything that's happening at the moment, you've got to go for him. They're going to be positioning him as one of the main men, considering what he's being paid each week.
Yeah.
So I gone with Lingard over Gibbs-White, but I think Gibbs-White could be a real treat for somebody this year because he had a brilliant season in the Championship for Sheffield United. I think he had over 22 goal involvements, and he certainly didn't look out of place. And he was part of the England generation with Phil Foden that won that World Cup a few years ago. So certainly not to be sniffed at all.
Okay, so first pick is then sorry.
So first pick, I was on my horse there a little bit. So first pick was Jimenez.
Yeah.
And then second one, that was in 5th round. And then second was Ryan Aït-Nouri in 7th.
Okay, so, I mean, let's take Jimmy out of the equation then. Who are you going to pick first out of all the Wolves assets?
Aït-Nouri for me looks good this year.
Aït-Nouri, okay.
Yeah, you're looking at assists, clean sheets, if the team performs. And, in terms of ball carries, dribbles, successfully executed, that sort of thing, there's some real value in him. I think it won't be far from Marc Cucurella sort of type.
Okay, interesting. Because, I mean, if you look at the current Wolves assets, I mean, it's hard to judge because I felt like a lot of your points came from the defense, right? But now that, we've lost Saiss and all those guys, if you look
Jose
at...
Sarr as well, Jose Sarr was keeping a lot of clean sheets. I don't know if you can bank on that 2 years in a row.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you look at points per game, right? Aït-Nouri actually sits second, right? At 8.39. So, I mean, if he wasn't rotated as much, maybe he'd be higher up on the total points. But what about the next 3 assets from Wolves? Who are you going to pick?
I think Neves might be playing slightly further forwards. The boss wants the team to be a little bit more attacking. So I could say, maybe Neves getting involved a little bit more. Hopefully a couple more goal involvements would be great. So that could beef him up over the season. Pedro Neto, also smashing player. Gibbs-White. Daniel Podence could really go under the radar if he's playing as a 10 behind a main striker. And also Max Kilman, carries the ball, wins a lot of headers. Big, tall, big strong boy. So as always, but I'm very much an optimist with Wolves. So I appreciate that there's a lot of head over heart with it. Well, heart over head with this sort of stuff at the moment.
And I mean, is there no love for Pedro Neto as possibly being like one of these top 3-4 picks?
Within the club, absolutely. I'd have Pedro Neto as number 1, but I just think that in terms of Aït-Nouri, he's the one to look at. But yeah, if I was looking at the list, I'd say Neto, Aït-Nouri, Jimmy, when he's back, might go on a run. Podence, definitely. Gibbs White. I think Wolves are looking to be a lot more offensive this year.
Okay. Well, I mean, I appreciate the Neves shout, especially with Jimmy out, because I think Neves is on penalties now as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so that would definitely bump up his value for me, because I think Neves at one point during last season, he had a bit of a purple patch, right? I think between it is a very small window, but looking at between like maybe end of Jan until like mid-March, he was like averaging maybe around like 10 points per game. He's got a bunch of double-digit scores in there, obviously some with goals, some with assists, but if he can hit that form, he would be serious value this season, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just looking now, so it's around, from middle of February onwards. Yeah, you're looking at, so you're not far off about maybe 60 points there, perhaps, really. And that's across 4 fixtures. And then these are teams that are of a similar level to what Wolves have in the first 6 weeks. Everton, Watford, Palace, West Ham. These are teams that could either have a great season or there could be, there's the opportunity to have some good results. I mean, obviously it's a Premier League and there's no easy games, but, there's, I think with respect to the fixtures, top 6 teams coming in. Yeah, it's only middle of September when they run into a double header of Liverpool and City. Otherwise, it's just Spurs really that stand out in those first 6 games. So I think there's early season, there's certainly some value in it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So what about a hidden gem or two? Do you have anything up your sleeve?
Hidden gem or two? So from Wolves in general?
Wolves in general. Just Wolves. Yeah.
Wolves in general. Okay, cool. So I'd say Morgan Gibbs White. If you've got him available in your... Because he hasn't got a massive profile really with respect to the league or anything like that. He's new into the team. It's as if he's a new player, to go with the old adage, but he could really surprise a few people this season.
Yeah, you talked about his Sheffield performance as well, right?
Yeah.
It's one to definitely not let slip by your thoughts.
So even if he's on the bench, he's worth having just in terms of potential alone.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, is there anything else you want to maybe drop in terms of Wolves assets that we haven't discussed yet?
I think Jose Sarr. He has a lot of. He was very much of the Dubravka sort of build there a little bit, in that he would get a lot of saves per game. Very similar to Robert Sanchez as well last year. Providing like the game doesn't get away from. It doesn't get away from him taking a lot of shots on target. He's very much a shot stopper. So there's some good points there. You could have a nice beefy weekend off him, particularly if there's a clean sheet as well. If that's brought it over the line, I think he could surprise a few people.
Yeah. I think, honestly, that's a great shout. Where was he in terms of... I'm trying to remember now. But I believe he was the top goalkeeper of last season, right? With, like, pipping Alisson by, like, 1 point, maybe?
Yeah, I believe so. So let's just have a look. Yeah, so he was on 325 points last year. Just bring it on to players. And, yeah, it's certainly, It's not a bad thing if all he can do is disappoint you,
Yeah.
That's kind of where you're at.
Yeah, and he set 4th on the list for total number of saves of 121. So quickly on the players that we kind of gone through, right? I do want to kind of maybe gauge what round you're going to be drafting them in. So, I mean, even though Jimmy's injured, will you still be trying to draft him and maybe stash him for the rest of the season? Or do you think you can afford to let him sit in that waiver window?
Oh, no, so he's definitely a draft and stash. I'm very loyal to the boys.
Yeah.
We actually had our draft the other week. I was in a different country for it, so with a couple of technical issues and stuff, we managed to get it over the line. Everyone's drafted very well. Should be an exciting season. But yeah, Jimenez goes on the bench, and I managed to replace him with Scamaccio, who's coming at West Ham off the back of having 12th pick and first waiver on it.
Okay, and which round would you be trying to draft Jimmy now, though? Because, like, given his injury, like, what round do you think you can get him?
I think you're going to very late. So maybe 8th, 9th, 10th, if that, it's got to be a big league. I think if you're playing in a 5 or 6 person league, I'd let him go into the waivers.
Okay. What about Ruben Neves? What round are you aiming for?
Neves, I'll be looking at maybe rounds 6 or 7. There's other priorities to fill out as opposed to a sitting mid at that point.
Yeah. What about Ait Nouri? Which round?
Ait Nouri, I went for him in the 4th round.
Okay. What about Podence?
Again, sort of middling, so maybe 5 or 6.
Okay. And finally, Nathan Collins. What round would you be trying to take him in?
He's dropped through at the moment on our 12-man league, so it's one of those where the proof will be in the pudding a little bit.
All right. There's finally one asset that we didn't touch on. I mean, before we get to that though, Pedro Neto, which round would you be drafting him in? I took him in, I think, my 3rd or 4th round, start of 3rd.
Yeah, I'd say third's a sensible one. I think if you're really keen to have somebody that could get you a lot of points, you're going for 2nd. In a big league, but sort of 10 plus players. But I think Neto in the 3rd across the board really is pretty realistic. He certainly has a massive upside considering his relatively low profile, given that he didn't play much last year. So that's the thing here with the Wolves. Not a lot of people know about what they have to offer. So there is some value on a few of them, like particularly just wide players, people with assists. That's the one.
Okay, and the one player that we didn't really talk about, Johnny, he kind of came back in towards the end of last season. I mean, he does have some weird negative scores in there, but when he first came back, he had like 2 goals in his first 3 games or something like that.
Yeah.
Would there be any sort of like chance of like drafting him?
I think you could pick up Johnny maybe in 8th, 9th or 10th around then.
Okay, all right. So would you go Johnny or would you go Aït-Nouri?
Oh, Aït-Nouri.
Okay, 100% on Aït-Nouri. You're very high on him.
Oh, he's it's obviously you got Semedo to come back and it's up to the boss to see who's going to play, but he could play further the field if he needs to. This one of these where a year from now when he looks to take back, I'm going to sound like some kind of Mystic Meg character, or am I going to sound like a bit of a Wally? But I'd say that he's certainly there over the season to skip, hopefully break 200 points.
All right. Now let's move on to our final segment, trading assets. So Neil, when you do trades, do you look at form? Do you look at fixtures? Do you do 2-for-1 trades? What's your secret sauce?
Well, I try not to do any trades because they always seem to bite me in the bottom a little bit. Similar things sort of happened last year when I managed to trade away Raheem Sterling, thinking he wasn't going to play too much, with Declan Rice to solid up the midfield and get average out some 8 points, and then he hit the form of his life. And it basically cost me the tournament. So bit of a heartbreaker with that one. Trading away to the person that won it in the end. But every day's a school day, so no harm done.
Yeah, that's true.
I think with respect to trades themselves, you got to look at what you think your upside is, but also what are they trying to get rid of. You've got you're kicking the tires basically, aren't you? You want to see what's happening. I don't generally go for 2-for-1s just because it means I've got to drop somebody else from it, and then it makes it a little bit more difficult to sort of compute it. So I generally go for a 1-to-1 trade, but also I do like taking a risk, and I do like to roll the dice on it because that's the point of the game. It's fun, isn't it? So unfortunately, more often than not, it stops. I'm creating obstacles for myself. So this year, I have no idea what my tactics will be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can you talk about any of like the best trades that you've ever done though before we sign off?
Oh God, they're all terrible. I'm rubbish. But I think the one I got most enjoyment from was trading out Paul Pogba for Jesse Lingard just before that game when he came in for United a couple of years ago. I took a bit of stick for it, and then Lingard ended up scoring 2 goals or something and had an absolute worldie of a game, and then was very disappointing for the rest of the season. I get very impatient, so that's what makes it so fun for the other lads playing. It means that I've lost my fringe a few years ago.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Well, Neil, I mean, it's been fantastic chatting all Wolves with you. Do you have any final thoughts, final comments to give to our managers before we sign off?
Just enjoy it, really. It's there to be enjoyed. Don't let it stress you out or anything like that. Everything's a bit hard at the moment, so don't. If a weekend doesn't go your way, don't take it to bed with you. Just chill. There's always next week.
Yep, I think that's fantastic advice. Like Ross always says on the podcast, just have fun. Enjoy it.
Absolutely. It's hard to take it personally.
Exactly. All right, great. Well, listeners, we will sign off there. I think our next episode is going to be with our Brighton fan. Definitely looking forward to that one. Going south for a bit of a warm weather, So until the next episode, peace.